All right, so we are ready to look at the next piece on Google Sheets. Just looking at some of these formulas and functions and things that we can do. Just a quick reminder, we looked at math, do some basic things, sum, product, things like that. We have logic using and, or, not, those kind of things, and if statements. Statistics, we found things like the average, the mean, median, and mode, the minimum, the maximum, and just a bunch of items like that. Now we're going to take a focus on some text. Text is going to be something that we can use to kind of manipulate like letters and characters as opposed to just numbers and doing a lot of these mathematical operations. In general, in computer science or in technology studies in general, when you're storing data, oftentimes the easiest way to kind of split your data in the most distinct two groups, one of them is going to be numbers, what you plan to do mathematics with, and the other one is text that you plan to use some sort of shenanigans or changing or adapting or moving things around. So we're going to look at the join function. We're also going to look at cropping, so we can grab the left or the right characters of certain items. And we're also going to do a little activity where we fuse it together on there. And in addition, we're going to be looking at the length. We're going to be able to find things within our cells, like find a certain piece of text. And we're also going to be able to substitute or replace things on there. So with that said, let's jump in to this first piece. We are no longer on statistics, so I can change this name. So D, text manipulation. All right. So an example that we can look at for joining, we can make two different items kind of fuse together. And what I have here is, we have these cells with their first name and their last name. Now, what if I wanted a cell to contain both of those pieces of text together? What I could do is I could join them. So just like any other type of formula or function that we want to do, I can say equals, and we don't need to put anything in specifically. The only thing that we need to focus on is we're going to choose which cell. So this is going to be A4. And then I'm going to say and, or the ampersand symbol. All right. That's Shift 7 on most keyboards. It's that little squiggly, with the loop that shows that it's all being added. And then I'm going to also click on B4. So I'm saying that this cell is equal to A4 with B4, and they get fused together. Now we're going to notice a little bit of an issue with this when I press enter. You can kind of see it on the preview. Our person James Butt, well, their name got fused together, James Butt, one word. All right. But I'm going to extend this. I'm going to click on this little blue square and drag it down. Repeat the equation all the way down. We're noticing that we have the same issue. We look at each of these people or these individuals. There's an issue with this. There's no space. Usually when you have somebody's last name, you want it to be like James space Butt, all right? Or Josephine space Darakshi, all right? So what we want to do is fix that. And how do we fix that? Well, there's a pretty easy solution for this. What we can say is equals. We're going to choose that first cell, A4, but before I put in B4, I'm going to put in a space character. So in quotes, I'm going to put quote, space, quote. Then I'm going to put another ampersand, like another and symbol, and then I'm going to plug in the last name. When I press enter, now we got the space added to it. And if I continue the equation all the way down, this looks just a little bit neater when we're talking about each of our individuals. You could also go into any one of these, and that's not all that you can do. You could put in a dash even. When I press enter, now we add a dash onto the end piece. All right. I could put in really anything that I want. It would look kind of weird, but the example still holds. You can plug in whatever type of text you want as long as you put it in quotations. So, I could also put in of the family. So now it is Abel of the family McLeod. And it sounds more, Game of Thrones like, very prestigious. And let's try to extend that, going back up. All right. And I'm not going to read all of them for obvious reasons. But, you could look. Lena of the family Paprocki, Donette of the family Faller, and things like that. So that's our first piece. We're able to fuse or combine different types of cells together. All right. So after this, let's scroll down a little bit. Let's see what else we can do. This next piece is going to involve cropping or choosing pieces to be removed from it if we want to remove items. And the main idea, we're going to be looking at usernames. We're going to be making usernames and passwords using logic instead of somebody sitting there trying to type it all out and things like that. So let's jump into that. All right, so we have our same users again. We have their first name, their last name, and we also have their employee ID. So let me just shrink this down a little bit. I just want to move the things on the right a little bit closer. I want to be mindful of everything. I don't want to cut anything off. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the left and right aspects of cropping our images from here. So, for example, on here, on the left, I can put in the equation equals left, and then I can put in some details to start grabbing letters from the first character over. So for example, James, I could make it so I just grab the first letter of it, or I could grab the first 2 letters of it, or the first 3 letters, whatever I really wanted on there. So let's do that. Let's try this out. Equals left parentheses. Now it's going to say, what's the thing you want to take the left of? I'm going to take that of cell A21. All right, and then I'm going to put a comma because I have more things to say on it. And then the number of characters. So how many characters do I want to go from the left all the way forward? Well, I'm going to take the first letter, and I'm going to close the parentheses and press enter. All right, it just takes the letter J. I'm going to extend this rule down so we could see it applying for everybody. All right. And what we get is just the first letter of each of these individuals' names. All right. So when I do that, I can grab just some partial pieces, the crop or the cutoff of their name, and take things that I want. If I wanted to adjust it and make this, let's say, 3 spaces, we could make the first 3 letters jam. And we could also continue that for all of these, and we can see that it just grabs the first 3 letters of it. I'm going to take just the first letter because we're going to be setting this up for an example. So we're going to continue that so they all just take the first letter of their name. Similar to left, we also have right. So we're going to say equals right, parentheses. All right. This time we're going to grab the last 4 digits of their employee ID. All right. And the reason that we're going to do this is we're going to generate a username and a temporary password using all of the stuff inside of here. All right, so I'm going to click on that. This is the cell that I want to grab the right data. All right, and then I put a comma, and then how many characters? I'm going to say 4 of them, so almost all of them. When I press enter, 5561, and that is the right 4 characters here. All right, I'm going to drag this down to repeat this process for everybody. And now we have some different types of data that we can use to start building in a temporary password for our users. This is kind of something when you have to make your first user account somewhere. Sometimes you get a default password that's made from different information about the employee. So for example, if I wanted my user ID to be, let's say, James Butt, it should be J Butt. Should be the username, right? The first initial of James, and then the entire last name as the user ID. So how are we going to set this up? Well, we got to use some of the stuff from up here. We have to use that join system. When we go down here, we have to add that. So we're going to add a bunch of different ideas. So I'm going to say equals, all right? We're going to grab their first letter of their name. Then we're going to say and. I want their entire last name, so we're going to grab that. All right, I'm going to press enter. Now I was able to make their username. And if I click this drop-down box to bring it all the way down and extend it again, we have all of our usernames. All right. If you wanted to get a little bit fancier, maybe I want it to be an underscore. I can put that in, make sure I put an and on each side. So it's cell D21 and the underscore mark, because it's in quotes, and their last name. When I press enter on this, J underscore Butt, and then I extend this down, we can make their usernames just a little bit fancier looking on here, if we wanted to use them, of course. We don't always have to. It's just a nice example to show that we can if we want to. All right? And then finally, we have to issue them sort of temporary password. So there's a lot of things that we can do with this. I'm going to make a very, very easy password for them to use, just because I want to make it so that, when these employees sign in, they will change their passwords. All right, so why don't we just make it, the temporary password will be equal to, let's take the first letter of their name and combine it with the last 4 digits of their ID. And then when I press enter, that becomes their first temporary password. Now, this is not a good password, especially because it's easy to see where the password came from, right? These passwords are not something that you want to use as a password every day because somebody could very easily guess it, especially if they know how the password is formed from the first letter of the name and then the last 4 digits of their ID. Hopefully their ID is something they don't share with everybody. All right? So with that in mind, we could even do a little bit of extra work. Let's add an email address for each of these employees. All right? And again, this is not something where I'm trying to teach you how to set up an entire Office system. If you use a temporary password that's this easy, it's going to really not be good. This is more of us just trying to play around and using simple examples to design items. So now, what is their entire email address going to be? Well, I think we need to decide that up here. It should be, let's say it's at Brian Fadouk teaches.com. Let's say that's actually that's kind of a long email address. That's even a long email address. Let's call it fadoukschool.com. And now what we can do is we can grab their user ID, and then we can also put the email address at the end. All right? Equals, it's going to be their user ID and the text at fadoukschool.com, and the quotes, and press enter. And now we can see each of their usernames at my school name. All right, so I'm going to click this box and drag it down. All right, so these are each of the different users that we have, and their email address, and their username, and their password, and all of those other fancy things. I'm just trying to adjust these a little bit so they look just a little bit neater. I don't want these things, going off the edge of the screen. It just doesn't look very good. All right. And now what's pretty cool is, let's say, for some strange reason, let's use Donette Fuller. All right. Let's say that this name eventually gets changed to Sharon. I don't know. I'm just choosing another name. Now, when I change this, watch what happens to the left column, the first letter of their name, and their user ID, and their email, and even their temporary password when I change it. When I press enter, all of it updated. So remember, it's kind of the idea that when you build these things, this depends on the person's name. When I made their username, I didn't make it so, this S depends all the way back over here. It changes from the left column again. So we're kind of like carrying ideas forward from item to item to item. All right? So we were able to generate the user ID, temporary password, and email address all from our individual users in this system. All right? So this is kind of cool. We can grab left characters, we can grab right characters, and then we just did a cool application of like making or generating a username and a password for each of them. All right, the last thing that we're going to work on is we're going to be finding the length of an item, or len. That's how many characters are inside of it. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, we can easily guess there's 6 letters or numbers in it, so it's going to give us a length of 6. QWERTY, QWERTY, that's again 6 different items. So we can even use this to find the length of their password, and then we could start doing things based on those answers. We could look to see if anybody has shorter characters, a shorter number of letters in their passwords. Remember, your passwords nowadays should be at least 8 characters long. Right? We're also going to be able to find things in there. Maybe we have a complaint that too many passwords have 1, 2, 3 in them, just to kind of, add extra length to it, so we can find any passwords that carry 1, 2, 3 inside of it. All right, and then finally, we're also going to be having a situation where we can replace certain characters. We're going to be able to substitute them. All right, so let's dive into those 3 next. All right, so now we are in a situation where we are going to find the length of each of these different passwords. And also, these are the most common passwords from 2012. So if your password appears on this list, you immediately should change it, because I have it and tons of other people have it. Remember, passwords should not be something that you can easily guess. They should also not be something that's, an easy to guess word or an easy string of numbers that people can take a look at and, just kind of guess based on how popular these are. All right, but anyway, we're going to look at all of these, all right? We're going to make or find the length of the password. So we're going to say equals len, and look, it's right there, all right? So length of a string, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click back on cell A40, because that's the first one. The most common password for people was literally the word password. That is terrifying. Once I close the parentheses and press enter, all right, we got 8 as a number, because password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters long. Well, let's continue it down and see how that works. All right, 8, 6, 8, 6, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 6, and 8. So again, these are the lengths of different passwords. So we can go in and we can look at this and say, like, this password's too short, this one's too short, this one's too short, this one's too short, so is this one, and so is that one. Passwords have to be at least 8 characters long for our company or our business or whatever thing we're using to hold on to user passwords. All right. What we also have is the ability to find. The find option allows us to search for specific types of things within our passwords. So I'm going to say equals find parentheses, and it's going to say, what are you looking for? That's the first thing to do. So I'm going to put in quotes 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to end my quotes. I'm looking for people who decided to put 1, 2, 3 inside of their password. Comma, it's going to say, where do you want to search that? Well, I'm going to put it in A40. I'm going to close my parentheses, and I'm going to press enter. We got an error, but it's actually a good error. And in this situation, we looked for 1, 2, 3 within this text, and we didn't find it. So sometimes when we get these little errors, that is when we are actually in a good situation. Not always, but it depends on how you use the data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that little blue box at the bottom. It's a little hidden. 1, 2, 3, going to go all the way down to the bottom. And now we start getting mostly value, 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 value. But sometimes we're getting 1, and 4, and 1, and 1. What these mean is where on the list from left, remember we did the left piece, how many characters from the left-hand side that pattern or that piece of code, 1, 2, 3 that we're looking for, appears. This appears in space number 1 because it starts there. Same thing from here because it starts with 1, 2, 3. All right. In QWERTY, we didn't find anything. In ABC 1, 2, 3, we got 4, right? Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where it starts on here. So we can see exactly where 1, 2, 3 appears inside of that password. The word monkey doesn't have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This password happens to have it right in the beginning. That's where we got that 1 again. All right. What we can also do to even go a step further is we can say equals find parentheses. What are we going to look for? I'm going to look for 1, 2, 3 again, comma. I'm going to choose the same cell, right, A40, comma. This is where it starts looking from. So I can say that I want to search from it from 2 characters in. So if it starts with 1, 2, 3, it's not going to show up anything because character 1 starts with that. I'm going to close the parentheses and press enter. Again, we get that value. That's fine. but I'm going to extend it, and we should get only one answer, right? Only this one, because if we look at any of these equations, we're looking for 1, 2, 3 within the A row that it matches up to, and it's got to be 2 characters in. So if we start looking, just close that out. If we start looking, on this one, for example, we're not allowed to start searching here. We have to actually start searching here because we said start at character space number 2. All right. I could even change it that I want to start looking at character space number 4, right? So then it starts, it ignores, 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 but then right here on the 4th character, it starts looking for 1, 2, 3. I'm going to extend that down. We're going to get the exact same results. I just changed which character it starts searching in, right? And this one tells us that it's able to be found. Now, if I change that final value to a 5, starting character position number 5, it's not going to show up, right? Because we have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we start searching here. That doesn't have any 1, 2, 3s in it on that side of it. All right? So, with that in mind, we just want to make sure that we are able to identify things at certain points. And most of the time we can use the find option, but sometimes we want to find starting at a specific character. All right, and then finally, the last thing that we're going to look at is the substitute option. All right, what we can do is we can start replacing things if we needed to. So in these passwords, you may notice these are just lowercase and numbers. There's another way we can make our passwords stronger. What we can do is add a symbol. So I want to replace every instance of the letter S with a $sign, just to make it look a little bit more fancy and make the password a little bit harder to guess. So I'm going to say equals substitute, parentheses. All right, we're going to substitute things in this, comma. All right, we're going to put in the character that we want to find, comma, and then we're going to put in what we want to replace it with. And then I close my parentheses. So what this says is I want to substitute within the cell A40, everywhere you find the word S, I want you to replace it with a $sign. When I press enter, we get password, except notice the S's are $signs. I'm going to drag this down again. All right. Nothing happened here because there's no letter S's. Nothing happened here. Nothing happened here. All of these items didn't have the letter S anywhere in the cells, so we don't do any kind of substituting. Here we go. Trust no one, but remember that S got replaced with the $sign. All right. And the same thing for baseball also had that situation. So we can go in and kind of replace things or substitute items when it is helpful. All right. So that is the manipulation of text-based items. All right. These are a little tricky sometimes, but for the most part, it tends to be straightforward as long as we take our time. And remember, we can always try things out and see, kind of teach ourselves how it works. People who are experts in Excel or Sheets or any type of spreadsheet technology, they're never going to say, oh yeah, I know how to do every single thing off the top of my head. They're lying. What they know how to do is look up the information, watch tutorials, learn from them, and then apply that knowledge to the problem that they're trying to solve. And having that ability to research and find information quickly, and then comfortably replace it and adapt it to your own specific problem or situation is the easiest way to increase productivity and make yourself a very, very valuable member of an office team. All right. So the last thing that we're going to be looking at is, sure, we have all of these different formulas and functions that we can do. We're going to make our own next. So sometimes there's not always an easy formula that we can use. Sometimes we have to actually invent it or code the situation or the logic to do what we want it to do. And that one's pretty open. If you can think it mathematically, you can do it. So definitely something to look forward to in the next video.